Imagine the world's arteries suddenly blocked, a single decision in Washington, and global trade grinds to a halt. Supertankers freeze mid-ocean, supply chains snap, prices for everyday goods skyrocket within hours. This isn't fiction. It's the real risk if the United States shuts down the Panama Canal. Today, November 16, 2025, we ask, what if the world's most vital maritime shortcut is slammed shut? The answer exposes the fragility of our global economy and America's lingering power over it. The Panama Canal is more than a waterway, it's the beating heart of global commerce, connecting the Atlantic and Pacific, saving ships an 8,000-mile detour around South America. Over a century, it's enabled international trade and prosperity, but its location makes it a unique choke point. Control the canal and you control the flow of goods between hemispheres. A shutdown isn't a minor disruption, it's economic warfare, an act that could redraw global alliances and power for generations. More than 14,000 ships carrying over 5% of global trade pass through each year. For the U.S., it's a vital artery. 40% of U.S. container traffic moves through the canal. Asian goods reach U.S. East Coast ports, and American exports reach Asia, all thanks to the canal's efficiency. Closing it would pull the plug on a system powering global prosperity for decades. The real question: under what circumstances would the U.S. risk such a drastic move? In an era of rising tensions, especially with China, the canal becomes a powerful strategic lever, able to disrupt an adversary's economy without firing a shot. The Panama Canal's story is one of ambition, sacrifice, and geopolitical maneuvering. The French tried and failed, losing thousands to disease and bankruptcy. Their abandoned machinery rusted in the jungle, a testament to the challenge. The U.S., under President Theodore Roosevelt, revived the project, seeing the canal as a strategic asset. In 1903, the U.S. backed Panama's independence from Colombia, securing control of the canal zone. American engineers overcame immense obstacles, building massive locks and eradicating deadly diseases. The canal opened in 1914, transforming global shipping and cementing America's status as a two-ocean power. For most of the 20th century, the canal zone was American territory, fueling resentment in Panama and Latin America. The 1977 Torrijos-Carter treaties set the stage for Panama's control, completed in 1999. Yet the U.S. retained a crucial right to act militarily to protect the canal's neutrality, a source of enduring strategic power. The canal's legacy is not just engineering, but the persistent shadow of American influence. Panama may operate the canal, but American influence remains. The Neutrality Treaty guarantees the canal's permanent neutrality and gives both Panama and the U.S. the right to defend it. An appended clause gives the U.S. unilateral power to use military force to restore canal operations, a master key, even after the handover. This makes the U.S. the ultimate guarantor of the canal's security, shaping global strategic calculations. Any threat, state, terrorist, or even Panamanian, could trigger an American response. This isn't just history, it's a living tool of U.S. foreign policy. The U.S. maintains close military and intelligence ties with Panama, ensuring deep involvement in canal security. The Panama Canal Authority runs efficiently, but its stability is underwritten by American power. A shutdown wouldn't require warships. It could be diplomatic or economic pressure, backed by the threat of force. The U.S. could claim certain cargo or users threaten neutrality, justifying selective access. This controversial interpretation gives the U.S. a potent tool to weaponize the canal in a crisis. The foundation for a shutdown scenario is built on this enduring legal and strategic framework. The canal remains a lever of American power in the 21st century. Shutting the Panama Canal would be a last resort, reserved for extreme crises. One scenario: direct military confrontation with China. In a Taiwan conflict, the U.S. could block Chinese trade, crippling its economy by denying canal access. Another: enforcing international sanctions. If a rogue state nears nuclear capability and relies on the canal, the U.S. could pressure Panama to deny transit, enforcing an economic quarantine. A third: gray zone aggression. If a nation launches cyber attacks or economic coercion, the U.S. might retaliate by denying canal access, inflicting pain without firing a shot. Finally, if a foreign power tries to control Panama's government or canal operations, the U.S. would likely intervene, citing its treaty rights. Each scenario turns the canal from a commercial asset into a strategic weapon. The U.S. could justify a shutdown as protecting neutrality, but the real aim would be to reassert dominance over this global choke point. The consequences would be immediate and far-reaching. The canal's closure would send shockwaves through the global economy. The world would be forced to adapt, fast. The stakes could not be higher. A Panama Canal shutdown would unleash chaos in global shipping. Trade routes, planned months ahead, would be thrown into disarray. Thousands of ships stranded or forced on costly detours. A Shanghai to New York container ship would add 8,000 miles in 2 weeks to its journey. An expensive logistical nightmare. Fuel, crew, insurance, and charter costs would soar, doubling or tripling shipping prices overnight. Businesses on thin margins would buckle. Consumers would face sudden price spikes and inflation. The canal is vital for energy and agriculture. US LNG to Asia and grain to the Pacific Rim would take longer, pricier routes, raising energy and food costs worldwide. The Suez Canal and North American rail systems would be overwhelmed, causing congestion and backlogs. Ports like Los Angeles and Vancouver would choke on redirected cargo, rippling delays across the continent. The system can't absorb the sudden rerouting of 5% of global trade. The result? A systemic breakdown of supply chains, with global inflation and shortages. The world's logistics network would be pushed to the brink. The economic shock would be felt everywhere. The losers in a canal shutdown would be many, starting with the US itself. East Coast ports would see traffic plunge, jobs lost, and consumers facing higher prices and empty shelves. US exporters of LNG and agriculture would lose market share to less canal-dependent rivals. China, the likely target, would be hit hard. Its trade with the US East Coast and South America would face soaring costs and delays. Disrupted raw material flows from Brazil would raise Chinese production costs and risk food inflation. Asian and South American nations would be collateral damage. Japan and South Korea paying more for energy. Pacific South American economies facing recession. The Pacific coast of the Americas would be isolated from the Atlantic with devastating consequences. But there would be winners. Egypt, controlling the Suez Canal, would profit from diverted traffic. Nations with strong domestic supply chains might gain a competitive edge. US. West Coast. Ports and railroads would see a temporary boom, but at the cost of overwhelming their capacity. The global trade map would be redrawn. Fast. The world would be divided into new winners and losers. The disruption would be profound and lasting. A US-led canal shutdown targeting China would be seen as economic warfare, and China would hit back hard. Economically, China could threaten to dump US Treasury bonds, destabilizing American markets. It could restrict exports of critical components and rare earths, crippling US and European industries. American factories could grind to a halt, not from shipping delays, but from lack of Chinese-made essentials. Diplomatically, China would rally global opinion, painting the US as a reckless superpower endangering the world economy. Many nations, especially in the global south, might side with China, isolating the US diplomatically. Most dangerously, China could escalate militarily, harassing US ships, launching cyber attacks, or even escorting its own vessels near the canal. The risk of direct confrontation would rise sharply. The world would be pushed to the edge of a new kind of conflict. The economic and diplomatic fallout would be global. The US would face retaliation on multiple fronts. The crisis would not end at the canal's edge. The stakes would be nothing less than global stability. Shutting the Panama Canal would do more than disrupt trade. It would scramble the global chessboard. The era of open, secure sea lanes would end, replaced by suspicion and economic blocks. Countries would rush to friend-shore supply chains, trading mainly with trusted allies. The world would split, a US-led bloc versus a China-led bloc, with many nations caught in the middle. Global markets would fracture into competing, fortified zones. China would double down on its Belt and Road initiative, building new overland routes and possibly a rival canal in Nicaragua. Russia would promote Arctic shipping as an alternative. The world's trade map would be redrawn, literally. Efficiency and prosperity would give way to redundancy and higher costs. Economic interdependence, once a brake on conflict, would erode, making war more thinkable. The closure of a single canal could divide the world for a generation. A US shutdown of the Panama Canal would be a geopolitical earthquake. Global shipping would freeze, supply chains would break, and economies would plunge into crisis. The US would hurt itself and its allies, while China would retaliate on every front. The world would split into hostile blocs, racing to build new trade routes and facing a higher risk of conflict. The canal, once a symbol of global interconnectedness, would become a monument to confrontation. Closing it would gamble global stability for strategic gain, at the risk of chaos and war. The foundations of the modern world would be shaken. Are we ready to dismantle the system that has defined our era? In the pursuit of advantage, what new dangers might we unleash? The future of global order may hinge on the fate of a single narrow waterway.